right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies might have inspired it. But today on the show, it's another of our end of the year wrap up. Well, we put these out at the beginning of the year, so it's the beginning of the year looking back at the end of last year. Anyway, this is one we do every year where Josh Bell from Awesome Movie Year joins me to talk about our top 10 first time watches of older films that we watched for the first time in 2025. We get into a lot of great movies here. We also hear from Josh's Awesome Movie Year co-host Jason Harris. We'll comment on his picks as well. Lots of great classic movies to get into, ranging all the way back to the 30s, all the way up to just a couple of years ago, things that are recent but we didn't happen to catch at the time that they came out. So that is coming up in a second. Before we get to it, I want to remind you, as always, to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together. That way you'll get all of the new episodes as they come. And you can also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. And with that said, let's talk about our top 10 first-time watches of 2025. Josh Bell is back with us for another year of first-time watches of older films. How's it going, Josh?
Oh, it's good. It's exciting. I always enjoy doing this episode. I feel like this year, I think this is coming out after our regular top 10, so maybe I mentioned it there, but I had a lot more enthusiasm for older movies that I saw this year than the new movies that I saw, which is a shame in a way, but also exciting because there's so many great older movies to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, there's great movies new, great movies old. I'm always excited for all different kinds of movies. I did notice, though, as I was putting together my list, I think this is the least movies I've watched in a few years. It's just been a busy year for me, but that doesn't mean I wasn't able to find a list, though. There was plenty of great stuff to talk about. A lot of good, awesome movie year movies, too, which I think, I don't know how your list is going to come up, but I think mine will have quite a few. We'll talk about Jason's list, your Awesome Movie Year co-host later. I know he had a few. Good year for Awesome Movie Year.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I actually don't have any from Awesome Movie Year on my list, and perhaps because a lot of the movies that we watched and that we talked about, I had already seen,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely there's a lot of good stuff. And as we always say on there, every year is an awesome movie year.
Yes.
And I'm sure we talked about a lot of awesome movies from 2025 as well on that other episode. But I think this year may have been the opposite for me of you, in that I think this may be the most number of movies
Wow.
I've watched in a year. Something like 675 or
Woo!
somewhere around that. So yeah, that's a high number even for me. And I don't know I didn't make a plan of any kind that changed it. I just love movies.
Yeah.
And if I have time to do something, I will watch a movie.
Amazing.
And so I watched a lot of them.
We all need to be like Josh when we grow up and watch 600
thank
movies.
But I see other people on Letterboxd, even among people I follow, and I'm like, man, I'm not even at the head of the pack here compared to some people.
Wild. Absolutely wild. Well, let's start getting into our list. Josh, what do you have for your number 10?
All right. So my number 10 pick is, I was sort of torn on whether to have this at number 10 or to put it in the honorable mentions, but I decided to make it number 10. One thing I did this year was I watched a ton of 80s slasher movies, which is something that it was sort of like a comfort viewing thing for me almost, because they're very formulaic, a lot of them. And it just soothes me, I suppose. I watched a lot of them like before going to bed. And so most of them, I enjoy the experience, and I still have a whole list of more that I'm planning to watch in the future. But a lot of the times they're not very good. But I was pleasantly surprised by this movie from 1984 called The Initiation, directed by Larry Stewart. And I didn't know a lot about this movie going in. I literally have just gone on Letterboxd and found lists of 80 slasher movies. And if they're streaming on a service that I have access to, I add them to my list, and I just kind of go in blindly-ish to each one. But I should have realized that I would have enjoyed this movie because the writer of this film, Charles Pratt Jr., is what later went on to be the showrunner of Melrose Place, which I was a huge fan of in the 90s. And this movie is a really fun intersection of that kind of like soap opera storytelling with slasher movie stuff. And it stars Daphne Zuniga, who later on was part of the main cast of Melrose Place. And it's got this kind of campy, witty dialogue, a lot of these really offbeat side characters. And Daphne Zuniga's character has this kind of dark family background that is very soap opera-ish, and the twists in the movie are right out. I don't want to give away the big twist here, but it is right out of something that you would have seen on Melrose Place. So it's just a really fun combination of those two styles, where she's this college student and there's a killer who's stalking people and she's in danger and all of this slasher movie stuff, but also the weird background of her family and who her parents really are and stuff like that. So I feel like, unlike some of these slasher movies where I would watch and then look it up later and realize, oh, this has a cult following, or this is considered a hidden gem and it didn't really do much for me. This is the opposite. This movie does not have a cult following. It's not considered a hidden gem by most, but to me, it totally was. And out of all of these like low level 80s slasher movies that I watched this year, this was probably the most fun for me. So The Initiation from 1984.
Well, first of all, I was just thinking recently about how 80s slasher movies are kind of like you said, like a comfort thing. It's like you just watch them and you could just slip right in and just like kill the evening just watching movies like that. And it's like they're just fun and they're silly. And yeah, no, I need to watch more of them, honestly. And I haven't heard of this one, but I did pull up the poster while you were talking about it, and the girl is a candle, and like that's a pretty good poster. I like that poster.
Now, a lot of them have really, really fun posters and taglines that the movies do not live up to.
Sure,
but I feel like this one did. It did live up to it.
All right. Well, I'm also going to start with some camp for my first one here. We didn't watch as many Lifetime movies this year as we usually do, me and Gina, but one of them stood out that we watched. It's called Deadly Yoga Retreat from 2022. It is directed by Brian Herzlinger, and it's basically exactly what you expect from the title, like most Lifetime movies are, but completely incompetent. It's very, I think, on purpose with the way that it is like staging everything in the most ridiculous possible way. This is supposed to be a yoga retreat, but it's taking place in a hotel in full view of all the guests. There's like chefs and there's like other vacationers and families there. It's clearly not a yoga retreat whatsoever. The girls are all so incredibly stupid, and their yoga instructor is this sexy guy who's like, his face is right there on the brochure. So he's obviously like, the whole purpose of even going to this retreat is not for yoga, it's for this guy. And then immediately he's like basically assaulting them all. And he's mugging at the camera the whole time he's doing it. It's so ridiculous. It's so much fun in that just like bad movie kind of way. And yeah, this was the best terrible Lifetime movie, as there are many of them that I saw this year. And if you're into that kind of a thing, it's definitely worth it checking out.
All right. Is it just bad, or is it like self-aware? I mean, do you feel like there's some effort on the part of the filmmakers to like bring something clever and fun to it?
I feel like it has to be, because like it's too funny. It's beginning to end funny. Like, is it? I don't know. But at the same time, it has to be, because it just feels too funny to not be.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know if I've seen a lot of Lifetime adjacent movies, like movies that are in the same vein but are not actual Lifetime movies, but I haven't seen any, or very many, if any, actual Lifetime movies. But I know there's a serious camp following for some of these. The what is it? The Stalked by My Doctor movies with
Those are
Eric
great.
Roberts have a huge cult following.
Yeah, and the Wrong series with Vivica A. Fox, those are all great. So
Yeah.
yeah, and those all know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. But let's go on to your number 9. What do you got?
All right, so my number 9 pick is Night of the Living Dead, but not the George Romero version, which of course I have seen numerous times and did not watch for the first time this year. But I had not seen the 1990 remake directed by Tom Savini, the legendary makeup and special effects artist. This is the only movie that Tom Savini directed. And, you don't expect a whole lot, necessarily from a remake of a horror classic like this. And the thing about Night of the Living Dead is that it accidentally fell into the public domain. So there are tons of remakes and reboots and spin-offs and whatever, because people can do whatever they want with it. But this movie is a really smart update of the concept. George Romero is involved as a producer and writer. So he gives you the similar kind of social commentary and gives you enough variations. It follows the story fairly closely of the original, but gives you enough variations that it doesn't just feel like a lazy rehash of it. Tony Todd is great, taking over the main role, and Patricia Tallman is the other kind of main survivor fighting against the zombies. And it's in color, so that's a different approach right there. Of course, the makeup and the effects are great because Tom Savini is great at doing that, but it's also just like a really fun, really effective horror movie that is still scary and is still intense, even though you know the basic beats of the story. And it's only at the end where I think they tried a little too hard to decide, how do we change it so it's not just a copy of this very iconic ending from the original. But overall, for something that you wouldn't really expect there to be much to it, it's really entertaining.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I've always wanted to, and I would assume that someone like Tom Savini would like have a reason for remaking Night of the Living Dead, and like there'd be a reason for the whole story and something unique to it, and of course the effects must be great. So yeah, I want to see that for sure.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I think the reason may have very well been that some producer decided they were going to give them money for it or whatever.
Money's always a good
But
reason, but yeah.
but given that, right, to get Romero involved, to really treat it with the respect and have, allow Romero to come back in 1990 and decide like, okay, well, if I made this movie now, what are kind of the issues or concerns or whatever that we would want to talk about, and be able to do that. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Right on. I will go for my number 9 with Prime Cut from 1972, directed
Ooh,
by Michael
yes.
Ritchie. The weekend that Gene Hackman sadly passed away, I went on a little Hackman marathon and just randomly picked it. I had heard good things about it before, but I didn't really know anything about the movie aside from him being in it, and it's freaking weird. It is such a strange movie. I described it on my letterbox like a gangster movie crossed with The Handmaid's Tale, Deliverance, North by Northwest, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Just throw all that in a blender and you kind of get what it's about. But it also stars Lee Marvin, and it's just this super weird, disturbing, dark story with some great action, but then it's also funny, and just it's one of those movies where you really genuinely have no idea what is going to happen from scene to scene as it continues to unfold. Like, you really don't expect it to go in the places that it goes, and by the time you get to the ending, you weren't expecting any of that either. And of course, Gene Hackman is freaking great in it. But yeah, this is I know we covered a couple of Michael Ritchie movies on Awesome Movie Year, and we might have like mentioned it in passing, but yeah, this is definitely one that I feel like it's maybe a deep cut. I don't know if as many people are into this one, but it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I really liked this movie when I saw it, and in fact, I was just looking. This was an honorable mention on my first time watches list in 2015, which is
Okay.
when I saw this movie. And I still remember the like chase scene. You mentioned North by Northwest, and there's a similar kind of, it's like a tractor or a combine or something
Yeah.
chasing Lee Marvin through this wheat field, and that's still like a great variation on that. So I agree, very entertaining film. I like that one. Good
Awesome.
pick.
Well, let's go to number 8.
My number 8 pick is Brian De Palma's Obsession from 1976. And we know, De Palma is well known for being like a Hitchcock, I don't want to say plagiarist, but in some
Devotee.
ways, yeah, he's a Hitchcock devotee. I mean, like he's talented enough that he can pull off all these homages to Hitchcock in so many of his films. And this film is a very clear riff on Vertigo. It's not even the first time that he may, or it is the first time. It's not the only time that he did a riff on Vertigo. I think Body Double, which is from the 80s, is a bit more well known as a kind of variation on Vertigo. But this one, I mean, in a way, this goes back to what I was saying about the soap opera storytelling in The Initiation, because it has that that kind of absurd twist. And I don't want to, again, give away what happens in the end, but the ultimate twist to this relationship between this character played by Cliff Robertson and this woman that he meets, played by Geneviève Bujold, who looks exactly like his late murdered wife, and he then falls in love with her. And the truth about who she is and how they are connected is very, very soap opera-ish. But before that, it's so stylish. Geneviève Bujold is really good as this naive, or is she, young woman who is swept up by this older man played by Cliff Robertson. And John Lithgow is great, hamming it up like crazy as the main character's business partner slash possible villain of this movie. Could he be? And he does this. He's this Southern lawyer. It's set, I think, in New Orleans. And so it's got all this sort of Southern atmosphere, but a lot of it is also set in Europe, where the main character travels, where he meets this woman who is the spitting image of his late wife. And it's one of these movies, you get to the end and you get to the twist, and either you think, oh my God, this is amazing, or you think, what the fuck? This is the most ridiculous, dumb thing possible.
Wasted all my time right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And I loved it because it's the kind of thing where a studio was, I'm sure, like, you cannot do this. And De Palma was like, oh no, but I can, and I will, and I am. And so very fun. All right away, goes way up toward the top of my list of favorite De Palma movies from 1976, Obsession.
I'm constantly trying to catch up on De Palma movies because I've seen way too few of them. But John Lithgow hamming it up puts this at the top of my watch list for sure. Definitely going to have to check it out. And by the way, Vertigo almost made my list. Saw that for the first time this year. But
that's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 8 for me, awesome movie year adjacent, Mr. Thank You. From 1936, Hiroshi Shimizu. As we talked about on the episode on Ornamental Hairpin, for some reason I really liked these two movies, and like I'm not always super into like the super old and super foreign, different kind of cultural kind of movies like this, but something about these movies just felt very kind of hypnotic to me, and just. And this one, it's kind of similar to Ornamental Hairpin in that it's just all these different groupings of characters that are kind of getting to know each other in this like unique situation. But in this case, it's on a bus, and you have the opportunity more so for people to get on and get off, and you get different groupings and different interesting conversations going on. Things get a little bit weirder, which I also liked a lot more about this movie. On Letterboxd, I kind of joked that this reminds me of a 1930s Japanese version of Barbershop, which is kind of the vibe that I got from this. It's a very interesting movie, very different from a lot of the stuff that I normally would pick, but I really enjoyed it. And I would like to check out more of this guy's, since I like both of his movies, I'd like to check out more of his movies at some point.
Yeah, that's awesome. I forgot that we had talked about this and that you had gone further because you liked Ornamental Hairpin so much. And I think that was an instance where I probably didn't have the time that particular week to watch more than the movie that we discussed, but I was curious because I believe those both were on the Criterion Channel at the time. And so they were available to watch. And I think that's awesome. Yeah, I love that we opened up a completely new area for you to explore there with our episode on Ornamental Hairpin.
Absolutely. Well, let's go on to number 7 for you.
So we'll stay in the 1930s here from yours to mine. My number 7 is from 1932. It's a musical called Love Me Tonight. And it's a pre-code movie, and I love pre-code movies. I feel like, the two things I mentioned, how many 80s slasher movies I watched this year. I also watched equally as many, if not more, pre-code films. So very different kinds of things, but another sort of niche that I find really fascinating. And musicals from this era are often not really my thing. But pre the sort of classic era of musicals, a lot of the songs are a bit shrill and the singing style just doesn't work for me. But these songs are great. They are Rodgers and Hart. And if you saw, Blue Moon this year, the Richard Linklater film, Lorenz Hart, that's him who co-wrote songs for this film with Richard Rodgers. And they're great songs. It's incredibly inventively directed. It takes place in France. Ruben Mamoulian is the director, and Maurice Chevalier, a French actor who did a lot of American films, is the star as this tailor who falls in love with a princess. It's just like, it's got a lot of this sort of like wacky misunderstanding stuff, but not in a strained way. Great supporting performances from Myrna Loy and Charles Ruggles. And it just all comes together, the comedy, the visual style, the songs, and the pre-code where they were able to like, kind of push the envelope with their innuendos and naughtiness and whatnot. All of that comes together beautifully in this film. Love Me Tonight from 1932.
It sounds interesting. It sounds fun. It's so weird how like some of these movies kind of stay, in the zeitgeist and like classic movie musicals, and some of them you just don't really hear that much about. I don't know how that
Yeah, I mean,
happens.
and this is not, yeah, this is not necessarily one that's on that list. And I'd have to look because Rodgers and Hart, of course, wrote a lot of songs that became standards that people don't even necessarily know where they're from originally. There may be something like that from this film, but I can't quite remember.
Well, I will go with the first of two Nick Cage movies on my list. I feel like that might have happened last year too. I don't know, but
He has a lot of
he
movies.
really does. Number seven, Valley Girl from 1983. This is just a silly, fun kind of a throwback romantic comedy. Nick Cage is just so much fun in this, and Deborah Foreman, she's great too, as this like kind of prissy valley girl who falls in love with this bad boy played by Nick Cage, and it's everything that you kind of think about when it comes to like those kind of 80s romantic comedies, but this one just takes it like up to 11 basically. It's just so ridiculous, so over the top. The mall culture is on like total display, and the concert scenes are so great too. All the music in this, because obviously Nick Cage being this like kind of punk rocker takes her out to music a lot, and so the band scenes are all great, and it just really paints that picture of that moment in time in such a fun way, and it's just a really fun neon colored movie.
Yeah, I watched this a couple years ago and I had not seen it before because I was doing some sort of Nicolas Cage roundup article and I thought I might want to include it. And I think I ended up not including it in part because Nicolas Cage isn't really like the main character. It's really about the Valley Girls. And you
Sure.
mentioned Deborah Foreman
Yeah.
as the lead, who's really good. And I think I was a little less into it than you were. I felt like it didn't all come together quite as well. And I like 80s teen comedies a lot, but definitely a fun one. And are you going to watch the remake now?
I maybe I should. I don't know. Who's in it? Is it anyone
I'm not sure.
worthwhile?
I have not seen the remake, and it's also a musical, I believe, from
Mm.
2020 with Jessica Roth, who I do like from the Happy Death
Oh
Day
yeah, she's
movies,
pretty good. Okay.
and no one else that I've heard of. So
All right.
I'm not sure how that turned out, but it looks to have a slightly lower average letterboxd rating, but could be fun.
I wonder
Could
if
be
they
fun.
made her the cool one and made the guy the more of the prissy one. That seems like something they do in 2020, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
Anyway, number six. What do we got?
So my number six film is a movie that I feel like we just recorded an awesome movie year episode where I was talking about Mystery Science Theater related to Ted V. Michaels,
Hmm.
and this is a movie that apparently was featured on Mystery Science Theater, but I didn't know that, and I watched the movie on its own and thought it was really good, and then I was
Wow.
like, "Oh, this is terrible that they made fun of this movie because it's so fun, it's so well acted." It's called Kitten with a Whip. It's from 1964, directed by Douglas Hayes, who was mainly known as like a sitcom director, I think, like a TV director, did very few films. But it stars Anne Margaret, and she is also sort of against type here. And this is a movie that has a very similar plot. If you've seen the Keanu Reeves film Knock Knock,
Hmm.
or the movie that it was based on called Death Game, which is much better. And Anne Margaret plays this sort of like free spirited is maybe too mild a description for her. I mean, she's basically like this sort of juvenile delinquent hellraiser who crashes into the life of this straight-laced businessman, played by John Forsythe. And basically she ruins his life and blackmails him by threatening to claim that he raped her or something like that. And she is so unhinged, and it's such the opposite of what you would expect from Anne Margaret, especially in 1964. And it's campy, but it's also kind of dark, and it's got this noir visual style, and it's worth watching alone for Anne Margaret's performance. And I could see how maybe some of the depictions of her friends are a bit like, kids today in 1964 with their bebopping and their hula hoops or whatever. A little bit like that, but really, I think grittier and more offbeat than that kind of like juvenile delinquent cinema or whatever that I feel like Mystery Science Theater made fun of a lot of those types of movies. So I never watched that episode where they make fun of it, but I would totally recommend just watching the movie itself for Anne Margaret's performance, for the bizarre twists of the story, and just how devious. And I mean, this is a production code era movie, but they really push those boundaries. So a lot of fun. Kitten with a Whip from 1964.
Kitten with a Whip. Josh is always bringing up the cat movies. That's his thing.
Yeah, I don't think there were any actual cats, but she's a sex kitten, of course.
Sure. Absolutely. It sounds like fun. Absolutely. I will go to Bronson for my number 6 pick from 2008, Nicholas Winding Refn. I did a guest appearance on Jimmy and Jake Gonzalez's Cinema Snobs VR podcast, where we watched a couple of movies in virtual reality and then talked about them in the virtual reality movie theater. It was fun. It was an interesting little unique kind of a podcast experiment. But it was my first time watching Drive in years, which that really held up for me. That was great. But I had never seen Bronson, and it's freaking great. There's a bunch of like these like earlier Tom Hardy movies that I have had on my watch list forever, and I just never got to. And so I was happy to get to this one. It's kind of the ultimate like college age film bro movie, where they like kind of like it for the wrong reasons. But most of those movies are awesome usually, and this is one of those. It's just a great character study of this guy who's like, due to his own actions, rotting away in prison. And Tom Hardy is, as expected, just awesome in it. There's a lot of like kind of up to your imagination, kind of open-ended questions about what is going on here. And I think based on the true story is kind of, open-ended as well. And you just don't really know exactly what to believe in any of it. And that's how they tell the story as well. And it really is mainly, though, the Tom Hardy show. And if you're a Tom Hardy fan and somehow have never seen Bronson, it's a movie you kind of have to see.
Tom Hardy doing a little voice.
A little voice. Whenever he's doing a little voice, it's worthwhile.
When is he not doing a little voice?
Yeah,
I feel like that's
true.
his whole thing, is doing the voices. So I saw this at the Cinevegas Film Festival, I think, when it was first coming out. And it was, I mean, by the point it got into Cinevegas, I think it was already acclaimed and, had been a sensation elsewhere. And I was looking forward to it. And I was sort of underwhelmed. I'm not a Nicholas Winding Refn fan from what I've seen. It's just, it's not for me. I didn't like Drive either. So, but Tom Hardy is always doing something.
He sure is. That is something that can always be said about a Tom Hardy movie.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
So, all right, let's go to number 5.
So my number 5 is a movie that I'm not even sure why I watched this movie, because it's not well known and it's not necessarily in one of my particular wheelhouses, but I'm glad that I did. It's from 2017. It's called It Happened in LA, directed by Michelle Morgan, written, directed by, and starring Michelle Morgan, who I don't believe has made any other films since. And it is right. I didn't necessarily know what it would be, I think, when I went into it, but it turned out to be right in my wheelhouse as someone who is a big fan of Whit Stillman and Noah Baumbach and that kind of dry humor, hyper literate style with these characters who are very self-involved. It takes place in LA among these sort of, they're all kind of like aspiring whatevers, but not really getting anywhere with that. And but they're all very into their own sophistication. And so it's got a lot of, highbrow-ish film references. Like, if you want to watch a movie where a joke hinges on Tokyo Story, this is
Mm.
the movie for you to watch. um, but I really, really enjoyed it. It took a little time to kind of get going and to understand, like, what is the tone here? Like, am I supposed to like these characters, or am I like, is it okay that I think these are sort of self-involved terrible people? And
Mhm.
it is, but they're really entertaining to watch. I think someone I noted in my letterbox that someone else on Letterbox had compared the main character to Blair Waldorf from Gossip Girl, in a negative way. But I love Gossip Girl and I love Blair Waldorf, who is one of my favorite TV characters of all time. So the idea of that kind of character, that kind of stuck up, but justifiably stuck up rich girl character in a Whit Stillman style movie where you could imagine Greta Gerwig showing up, if that all adds up to something that you would like, check out this film that sort of disappeared in the indie film ether in 2017. It
Yeah.
happened in LA.
Yeah, really interesting because this sounds exactly like the kind of movie that, like, all the letterbox people would be going after. But yeah, must have just disappeared, came and gone.
Yeah,
So
and it's possible that I got the recommendation from like a Letterbox newsletter where one of their staffers recommends a movie. And I think that actually may have been it. I should credit whoever it is, because thank you to them for pointing me to this film.
right on. I'm gonna have to check that out. Number five for me, going to an awesome movie or one that uh, perplexed the two of you, I believe. Hell's a Poppin' from 1941,
Oh, yeah.
directed by H.C. Potter. Uh, I this is one of those movies where I wish I had gotten a chance to rewatch it before we did this episode because it's kind of all a blur, to be honest with you, but I know I loved it. I had such a great time with this movie. It's so weird. It's this weird, for anyone who hasn't seen it, like this fourth wall breaking meta story of these comedians who are trying to turn their hit musical into a movie. And within the movie, that's what's happening, but they're also making it as they're going. And it's all super meta and super weird, which anyone who knows me knows that I love that stuff. I love like movies about filmmaking and anything that gets meta and stuff like that. There's a great opening title that says any similarity between Hell's a Popping and a motion picture is purely coincidental, which is captures the tone really well. And the whole thing, it's kind of feels like a precursor to like Zaz spoof comedies and like any kind of movie where they just throw anything at the wall. And even if something doesn't stick, like there's 10 more things about to happen in the next 60 seconds. So you're going to be getting weird sight and visual gags and like wordplay jokes and all kinds of weird stuff going on at any given moment. Yeah, this is one of those movies I would really love to get a chance to watch again soon because I want it to all stick and I want to like see what else is in there for me to like get into because it's a freaking wild one and very hard to explain.
Yeah, I mean, I endorse your endorsement of this movie, even though I didn't like it as much as you did. I think in our when we talked about it on Awesome Movie Year, Jason was just not on board with it at all.
Right.
And I like every the way you describe it sounds like something that I would love. And I think going into it, having read about it before we did our season and we were planning, I thought this is going to be crazy and awesome and I'm going to love it. And I think I liked it more in theory than I enjoyed actually watching it. And it
Mm.
is full of a lot of musical numbers that I think drag the comedy down or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's worth seeing, and it's worth seeing, if nothing else, to realize that in 1941 they were making a movie like this that feels like the kind of self-aware movie that wouldn't be made until decades later.
Yes, absolutely. This does not feel like something you would have ever expected to happen this long ago. So, yeah, if nothing else, it's worth checking out for that.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely glad that I saw it.
All right, number four, what do you got?
So my number four is a film noir from 1948 called Raw Deal, not to be confused with the Arnold Schwarzenegger film.
Yeah, sure.
It's not related in any way. Directed by Anthony Mann, and who is a great noir director as well as a great westerns director. I almost put one of his westerns on this list as well that I saw this year also. But I haven't seen enough Anthony Mann films, but this one is one of my, it may be my favorite, if not my favorite film of his, or certainly my favorite noir of his. And it's got your basic noir plot where this guy is takes the fall for his crime boss, and so he's in prison, and he wants to get out of prison, and he comes up with this plan with his girlfriend, and he gets out of prison, and he's on the run from the cops, but he's also on the run from his crime boss, who he was supposed to take the fall for, played by the great Raymond Burr, plays the villain in this movie, looking like a literal rectangle with the suits that he wears. He was already this very rectangular looking guy, but the suits that they put him in with these shoulder pads just make him look like he's belongs on Sesame Street in a lesson about shapes, but in a great way. And Dennis O'Keefe is the main star. Claire Trevor and Marsha Hunt play the two sort of dueling love interests. One is his girlfriend who helps him get out of prison, and the other is this caseworker who they kind of take hostage or take advantage of. But of course, over the course of this experience, she starts falling in love with this guy, and they're tormented. And it's visually inventive. It has this great narration that Claire Trevor delivers, where one of the things is that the narration kind of blends into the dialogue at times, where she says something in the narration and then she starts saying it in the dialogue. And it's just really well done, because, a big noir thing is all of this like internal struggle over what's right and what's wrong, what's the moral thing to do. And it's depicted really well here. So Anthony Mann, a great talent, Raw Deal from 1948.
Yeah, it sounds good. It sounds like a straight up classic noir, although like you said, like some of that stuff, like the audio thing sounds like a kind of interesting kind of twist on things. And yeah, I brought up a picture of Raymond Burr, definitely very shapely.
Shapely in that particular way.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. All right, another awesome movie for me at number 4, A Walk Among the Tombstones from 2014, directed by Scott Frank. The very inspired audience choice matchup for 2014 was between 3 Liam Neeson movies. I really got a kick out of that when I saw it on you guys' scheduling. And I'm really glad we went with that one. And I'm really glad the audience picked this movie, because I always thought it was just one of his random direct-to-video, just whatever. Like, I already saw 2 of those in the last year. I don't need to see another one. Liam Neeson movies. But this one is head and shoulders above the rest of them. Maybe his best of these action movies. Like, it's right up there with The First Taken. It is different though. It's much darker. It is, very violent. A lot of, not action so much, but more like detective kind of stuff going on. Dan Stevens is great in it, which is always great to see Dan Stevens pop up in something. And Liam Neeson is he's the Liam Neeson character that we know from all these other movies, but he really seems like he's in it, and he's really playing a character that feels worthwhile here. And the story is, it goes in different directions. It's a mystery that feels like raw, and it feels like you don't really know what's going to happen next in this, even though it feels very inspired by all of the classic, detective stories that we've seen before, and name check some of them as well. But yeah, this is definitely not what I was expecting when we came up with the Liam Neeson thing, to find a Liam Neeson movie that actually might be the best one.
Yeah, I like this movie a lot, and I had seen it in the theater and liked it at the time. And I think, as we talked about on Awesome Movie Year, after 10 plus years of those movies that you were just describing, and I've seen almost all of them, this movie looks even better in comparison, because like you say, like Liam Neeson is in it. He's actually giving a performance. Scott Frank is a good director and a good writer. This is an interesting story. It's based on a series of novels about a detective character that Lawrence Block created. And it's a shame that this movie wasn't more successful, because I would have loved to see a series of these Scott Frank, Liam Neeson films about Matthew Scudder, this detective.
Sure.
Yeah, so I agree. I like this. I liked it well enough the first time. I think when I saw it at the time and I wrote a review, I was like, oh, yeah, pretty good. But watching it again, it seemed even better. So good pick.
Right on. Let's go to number 3.
So my number 3 pick is a horror movie called The Changeling from 1980. It's not a slasher movie, but it is a horror movie from the 80s, starring George C. Scott and it is a haunted house movie, but it's also it's about grief. George C. Scott plays this composer and music professor who, in the beginning of the film, his wife and kid are killed in this car accident, and he's dealing with that grief. And so he moves to a new town. He takes a job as a professor at this college, and he moves into this house, which is like ginormous, and in no way should one person live in this house.
No.
And it's extremely obviously haunted.
Classic
But-
horror movie setup for sure.
Yeah, but he moves in there. To be fair, he didn't. He like I think the school provides it for him, and they're like, "It's a historical building. No one has lived in this in quite some time. How would you
Mhm.
like to live here?" I mean, and that sounds funny, but it's not a campy movie. It's actually really atmospheric. It's really creepy, and the ultimate plot is not about the ghost terrorizing George C. Scott, but is about it's a ghost of this like person who was abused, and George C. Scott kind of takes it upon himself to become an advocate for this person and bring someone to justice, this senator played by Melvin Douglas. And so it really has this, it is scary, it is creepy, it's got a great seance scene, but it's one of George C. Scott's like straight up best performances as an actor. And it has this real sensitivity to trauma and to abuse from the past, and the way these things are covered up, and the way that cover-ups persist over time, and that people's memories are tainted by them. So it's got a lot more going on than just the creepiness, but it has creepiness too. So The Changeling from 1980.
I'm sure I saw it years ago, and it's kind of like the blueprint for like The Sixth Sense and like all of the like 2000s like dramatic horror movies that like have been like every year there's at least one of those.
Yeah, you could definitely see M. Night Shyamalan having been influenced by this film.
Absolutely. Well, my next two are both like, how the hell have I never seen this movies? But we'll go with number 3, which is After Hours by Martin Scorsese, which maybe we'll be talking about in our next awesome movie or series. I'm not sure if we're doing that one in 85.
Oh, I don't know.
But hey, possibly. I'll watch it again. I would happily watch it again. But yeah, this is a movie that's come up on Piecing It Together like a million times as a puzzle piece. Anytime you've got a character in an all-night situation that just keeps going from bad to worse, like this is that movie. This is the blueprint. Like this is exactly what people are going for. Obviously we just had Marty Supreme. This came up like I think in every review. After Hours came up, and pretty much all these Safdie brothers movies, After Hours comes up. But yeah, this is like the perfect example of that though. That situation where this guy gets himself into some kind of trouble, and just trying to fix one thing ends up opening another can of worms, and then he's trying to fix two things, and then that just keeps going and going. Great performances all around, and of course with someone like Martin Scorsese directing the whole thing, I mean it all just comes together in such a exciting, exhilarating way that you're just kind of hanging on every step of what happens as it just keeps going and going. And it's just such a great movie.
Yeah, I'd also not seen this for a long time. I watched it for the first time a couple years ago, and I really like. Not the Safdie brothers, as I'm sure we've discussed,
Sure,
but a
sure.
lot of movies that I feel like before I saw this, there were a lot of movies that I liked, and I would read, oh, this movie is like After Hours, and I should watch After Hours, and I feel like I liked a lot of those other movies better. I
Really?
was a little underwhelmed with this one, and I mean, I'm trying to remember. I was looking up my Letterboxd, and you're right. There's a lot of great like supporting characters, and of course, the plot is the main character. Because he goes to all these different places and gets in all these different situations, it's an opportunity for so many different weird side characters to show up.
For sure.
But after a while, I just couldn't stand this guy who kept doing the stupidest
he's a
possible thing
schmuck.
at every moment.
Total schmuck. Yeah. And that's the best kind of character for this kind of movie. So
Yeah, but I think you got like there's a certain line, and this is the Safdie brothers too, where I'm just like, get me the fuck away from this person. I cannot stand you anymore.
yeah.
And I mean, with the Safdies, I think I'm at that point from like the beginning, and here it took me a little while, but I know this year another movie that was referenced a lot related to After Hours was Caught Stealing, and
Sure.
Griffin Dunn,
Yeah.
who's the main character in After Hours, plays a supporting character
Sure.
in Caught Stealing,
Yeah.
which I did enjoy.
Yeah,
That was
nice
a fun
little
one.
Easter egg there for sure.
Yeah.
That casting. But absolutely, let's go to number 2.
So my number 2 is a movie that I actually ended up watching twice this year. I watched
Ooh.
it for the first time early in the year, and then I watched it for the second time a few months later because I wrote an article about it. It's from 2023. It's called River by the Japanese filmmaker Junta Yamaguchi, who made a movie a few years ago that I think made my honorable mentions in this list, called Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, which was a COVID lockdown production and was incredibly inventive in its sci-fi premise, where these characters in a cafe discover that they hook these 2 TVs up and they can see 2 minutes into the future. And it's all done in a single take. That's a great one. I probably talked about it already.
Yeah, I think so.
And so this is similarly done. It is a time loop movie. It's set at this it's actually set in essentially the same kind of location as Ornamental Hairpin.
Yeah.
It is this rural Japanese inn. It's on the side of a river, and the characters are all stuck in a 2-minute time loop. And you think, oh, we're going to have to watch the same 2 minutes over and over and over again. And that is, other than like a bit at the beginning and a bit at the end, it is like 40 different iterations or something of this one 2-minute time loop. Each 2-minute segment is a single shot. And it's so clever. It's so inventive, the way that Yamaguchi finds different ways to move the story forward, because unlike a lot of time loop movies, every single person is aware of being in the time loop. And so there is a lot of comedy around that. And a lot of the early stuff is the staff at the hotel are mostly just concerned with making sure the guests are comfortable and like apologizing for everyone being stuck in a time loop. And don't worry. And like, this is why your food is cold, because we can't heat it up because of the time loop and things like that. So it's very funny. And there's a character in there who is a novelist who is under a deadline, who gets very excited for the time loop because he doesn't have to write anymore, because everything he writes will just be erased at the end of the time loop anyway.
Nice.
And so I definitely had some identification with that. So it's so clever. It's so funny. And yet there's also this, the main character has a whole arc about sort of her relationship with one of the other employees and learning that he's going to move out of the country. And what does that mean for their future and all this stuff. So it's one of these movies that you're just smiling from ear to ear from beginning to end. I loved watching it a second time, and I'm not a person who watches movies multiple times. So check out both of this guy's movies, but especially River from 2023.
Yeah, it sounds great. And like we've talked about, I think when we covered time loop movies, it's like it's hard to do something new and different with the setup. So that sounds like it actually does something different. So and twice kind of, since the other one sounds like it's basically a time loop.
Yeah,
in a way.
I mean the other one is it's not
different.
quite but there is a lot of like repetition in that movie, because they see what happens. A lot of the plot in that movie is they see what happens 2 minutes in the future and they're like, that can't be possible. And then circumstances somehow, of course, always conspire so that does happen. And so, I mean, both of these movies are fun. I think I like this one a little bit more, maybe because they had a bit more leeway. It's not in the midst of COVID lockdown and they can sort of change things up a bit, but both very fun.
Right on. Number 2, The Toxic Avenger from 1984, which I thought for sure I had seen, but it turns out I must have just seen other Troma films and just thought I had seen Toxic Avenger. I know I saw like at least 2 of the Nukem High movies, so maybe that's what I was mixing it up with, but I watched it in anticipation of the new remake, which I was not really a fan of, unfortunately, but I loved this movie. This was exactly what I want from the concept of what a Troma film is and who Lloyd Kaufman is and like what these movies are. This is all of the craziness, all of just the complete over the top ridiculous nonsense, the gore, the exploitation, the crazy, silly fun, and just the wildness of what you expect out of like this entire studio and distribution system and everything that they put out. Obviously, not all of the movies are going to be as good as this one, but this seems like it is kind of the zenith for that. And yeah, I was not necessarily expecting it to be as funny as it is. Like I thought it would maybe be silly, but then it's like, when you go to like a midnight movie and everyone's just laughing just to laugh at everything. But like I was watching this alone on my couch and cracking up the whole time. Like it's like genuinely funny beginning to end. And yeah, I was just so pleased to know that the idea behind what a Toxic Avenger movie is, it actually does exist. It's out there. It's that ridiculous and it's that fun and it's that funny. Um, Josh, are you a fan of Toxic Avenger? I feel like you are maybe not, but I don't know.
I have not seen the original Toxic Avenger,
Okay.
and I've not been a fan of the Troma movies that I have seen.
Most of them are very bad. Like, we just got done doing an episode about a Ted V. Michaels movie over on Awesome Movie Year. And yeah, a lot of like these kind of schlocky B movie kind of things genuinely are pretty bad.
Yeah, I believe it was this year, I watched Tromeo and Juliet
Hmm.
because James Gunn is a co-writer of that, and we were talking about Guardians of the Galaxy on Awesome Movie Year, and that was one of the few James Gunn things that I was not familiar with, and I struggled to get through
Yeah.
Tromeo and Juliet, and that's with James Gunn, who I think is very talented, and obviously went on to this huge career afterwards. So I also did not like the Toxic Avenger remake that came out this year. And I think because in part that movie was actually quite well reviewed, and a lot of the reviews were like, oh, it really captures the spirit of the original. It made me think, okay, well, I guess maybe I don't want to watch the original.
Yeah, that's fair, but at the same time, I don't think it captures the spirit of the original even one bit. So I don't know. I'm definitely not on the side of the consensus on that one. So I
All
don't know.
right. So maybe I should check it out, but I have not seen that or any of the, I think there's like 4 Toxic Avenger movies or something. I haven't seen that. I think I watched the Toxic Avenger cartoon series when I was a kid,
Yeah.
but I don't remember much about that. So something for me to check out.
All right, we're down to our number one. What do you got?
So my number 1 is another noir film. It's called The Big Clock from 1948, directed by John Farrow. And It it is a noir. It's a very effective thriller. Ray Milland stars as the editor of a crime magazine who is known, he is known, and the magazine, they're known for not just writing about like true crime stories, but investigating crimes and solving the crimes that the police don't necessarily solve. They're the precursor to Netflix documentaries.
Sure. Mhm.
And so he is assigned by his editor, played by Charles Lawton, as this ridiculous media mogul who owns tons of magazines. He is assigned to investigate this murder, and is prevented from going on vacation with his wife, in fact, in order to investigate this murder. And what he doesn't realize at first is that his boss has committed the murder and has framed him for it.
Mm.
So he is investigating a murder in which he is the prime suspect and doesn't know it. And as he goes on investigating, he realizes that all the clues point to him, even though he knows that he didn't commit the murder.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to throw off all of the writers and researchers on his staff from finding him, but also make sure that he's pleasing his boss, who he doesn't know is the real murderer, and engaging in an investigation. And it's very twisty and it's a thriller, but it's also really funny. And all of these, we talk about after, it actually is after hours ish in a way, because in the course of this investigation, there's all of these weird side characters that they talk to. Elsa Lanchester, who's best known for playing the Bride of Frankenstein, is
Mm.
so funny in this movie as this painter who turns out to be a witness because she sold a painting to the person who is supposedly the murderer, which is the main character. And they bring her in and they say, can you paint a picture of the person that you sold it to? And she paints this picture, and then she realizes she's painted a picture of the guy who she's been hired to paint a
Nice.
picture for. And she's trying to hide it, but she also wants to get paid. And it's so funny. And it also takes place primarily in this building that has, in fact, a big clock. And it is this amazingly designed Art Deco set where the company has all of these magazines, and each floor there's like a crime magazine, and there's a travel magazine, and there's a sports magazine, and each floor of the building is like a fantasia of each of these things. There's the travel floor that has all of this like, travel equipment and stuff, or the sports thing, and floor that has, tennis rackets and basketballs and whatever. And as you get toward the climax, and that Ray Milland realizes what's happened, and he's now on the run within his own building, trying to prove his own innocence, keep people from arresting him, and also stop his boss from now killing him, essentially, so that he can get away with this murder. And Charles Laughton is hilarious as the villain. It's just so fun. So The Big Clock, John Farrow, 1948.
It sounds great. Yeah, I mean, it sounds very funny, which is like, something I would definitely want out of a movie like that, because otherwise it sounds like it's like exactly what you expect out of a noir. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And it is. And I think what's great about it is that it starts that way, and you're like, okay, I see where this is. And it's, got the twists, and it's got the wrongly accused man. And as it goes on, it just really, it's like a slamming doors farce by the end, because he's got to go up the elevator to one floor while they're going down another elevator to another floor, and like hide among all of these props. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Sounds great. Well, for my number one, this year I did a special episode on David Lynch, and I watched a few David Lynch movies, and honestly, call them honorable mentions, but I could have included Inland Empire and Lost Highway on my list, which were both movies I watched for the first time this year. But the one I got to include at my number one is Wild at Heart, which is so freaking good. And another movie that I just can't believe I've never seen before, because it's kind of Nick Cage at his best. Laura Dern is also amazing, as is the rest of the cast. Willem Dafoe and Harry Dean Stanton, and like everyone else in this movie is just so damn good. But this is just the perfect mix of, like, you obviously associate weird and bizarre with David Lynch, but also like funny and sexy and sad and exciting. And it's kind of, to me, it felt like, and I'm sure, like with any of his movies, there's lots of ways to interpret it, but it just felt like the biggest celebration of just being young and dumb. Like, that's what this movie felt like to me. Just a full joy of life without any kind of consequences or like caring about what's going to happen. And Nick Cage just really embodies that. Him and Laura Dern just totally embody that. And yeah, it's, again, it just gets so strange, but it's so fun, and it's so just all over the place and so exciting. And one of those movies that when you watch it, and I got to see that with an audience at the Beverly Theater, and everybody was just so into it, and it was as weird as it gets. Like, everybody was just totally on the wavelength the whole time, and just getting into this crazy adventure that just goes all over the place, and just along for this crazy ride.
Yeah, I really need to see that. I have not seen that, or Inland Empire, actually. So I have seen Lost Highway, which I don't think I've seen those since I saw it in the theater when I loved it. So I definitely should check that out. And I know for a long time, Wild at Heart, it was like really hard to find.
I think
and now
so.
I think it's a lot. I was just looking, and you can easily rent it online. So I definitely want to watch that movie.
Right
I
on.
think I would enjoy it.
I'll be curious to hear what you think of it. So I threw a couple of honorable mentions in there with the Lynch movies, but I'll kick off the honorable mentions with also a few other awesome movies that I considered including on my list. Sullivan's Travels, Preston Sturges, great movie. I think that was your pick.
It was.
Duel, which is excellent debut, and is really lives up to what you would hope from a debut from Spielberg. So it's a great movie. Let's Scare Jessica to Death, another Josh Bell pick, and Le Samurai. So, which, speaking of all the noir that you've been talking about in this conversation here, a couple other things I'll throw on as honorable mentions. Newlyweds, which is something I did a special episode over at the Beverly with the UNLV Film Department podcast. It was Shaka King's debut film before he made Judah and the Black Messiah. And it's just a fun, sweet stoner comedy, like a dramedy more so. But it's really, really cool movie. And then last one, as you know, when we did a Awesome Movie Year episode on Ernest Goes to Camp, I did a giant Ernest marathon, and I watched for the first time Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam, which was the pre-Ernest movie, basically, with the same team and of course Jim Varney. And it it's a movie. Let's put it that way. It's a movie, but
Oh,
definitely I'm happy I finally saw it.
only you would have an Ernest movie on a list like
Oh
this.
yeah.
I love it. And I for a second I was like, there's no way that there was an Ernest movie that Dave hadn't seen in
Yeah,
that
no, of course
marathon.
not. No,
Yeah.
definitely not. So.
So, but I'm glad that you had so many awesome movie year movies on there, and especially that you had two of my picks
There you
because
go.
I'm glad to introduce movies like that, to you and that you enjoyed them. So yeah, I have a few honorable mentions. I was alluding to Anthony Mann already, and an Anthony Mann Western I watched this year, starring Gary Cooper, called Man of the West from 1958. And like Raw Deal the Noir, it's very tough and it's bleak. It's it starts out with a Western plot that you think, oh, this is your basic the outlaw, and he's trying to get away from his gang or whatever, but it really digs into the idea of like you can't escape your fate, and crime is going to come for you and all this stuff. So really well done. Anthony Mann Western, Man of the West. Another noir, and this actually does connect to Awesome Movie Year because we talked about Joseph Lucy when we did his film The Go-Between, but he was also known as a noir director, and I watched a 1957 film called Time Without Pity with Michael Redgrave, who has a small role in The Go-Between. And it's one of these other noir things where the character he's an alcoholic, and so he's trying to hold himself together while he's not been falsely accused, but his son has been falsely accused, and he's trying to exonerate his son from having committed this murder, and also trying to stay sober during the process. So that was a really effective film. And finally, a movie called Guilty Hands from 1931, starring Lionel Barrymore in a great performance. And it's a great pre-code type of movie because it's a movie where you can get away with a crime. And it's Lionel Barrymore playing this very arrogant lawyer who decides who believes that he can commit the perfect crime and decides to kill his daughter's fiance because he doesn't think that she should marry him. And much like The Big Clock, he has to lead the investigation. In this case, he did commit the murder,
Mm-hmm.
but he has to lead the investigation into the murder that he himself committed and appear to be genuine in it while also making sure suspicion doesn't fall on him.
Sure.
And Kay Francis co-stars as this great kind of vampy femme fatale type character. And it's just Lionel Barrymore just eats the scenery the whole time, and it's a lot of fun. So that is Guilty Hands from 1931. Those are my honorable. Oh wait, I take it back. I have one more. I said I wasn't sure what I was going to put on the bottom of my list, and I have this on my regular list, but I didn't get to it. It was Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean from Robert Altman from 1982. There were a bunch of Robert Altman movies on the Criterion Channel that were all expiring recently or a couple months ago, and this was the only one I managed to get to. But I know Jason is a big fan of this film. A Single Location. It was based on a play about this group of women who were all in like a James Dean fan club as teenagers, and they have this reunion. A lot of old secrets come up, and I love movies like that that are about characters reuniting and
Mm.
dealing with past issues and realizing their nostalgic memories are not so rosy after all. Great performance from Cher in this film, and Karen Black in one of the earliest depictions of a trans character in a way that now doesn't always look like the most sensitive portrayal, but is actually remarkably sensitive for 1982 and progressive in a lot of ways that even now it might not be. And in some ways it's not that, but very well done. And especially for a movie that is very stagey, it never leaves its one location. But Altman finds a lot of creative visual ways to make that seem like it's more expansive than it is. So that's a good one too. Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean.
I feel like every time I catch up with an Altman movie, it ends up on this list for me. So maybe
Yeah.
maybe one day I'll get to it. But yeah, we got into a lot of great movies there, but we still have a few more to talk about because we are going to hear from your Awesome Movie Year co-host Jason Harris about his top 10 picks. So let's listen to that.
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. It's your man's Jason Harris. Here are my top 10 first time watches. Though, we can't negate Dave's pick of Revenge of the Cats Anus 7, or Josh's pick, girls talking about abortions for 2 hours and then getting an abortion, whatever it is. Here are my top 10 picks. Coming in at number 10, it's Sullivan's Travels. We covered it in an awesome movie year. Preston Sturges, a master of the comedy form in the 1940s. This is from our 1941 season. It was a real pleasure to watch Preston Sturges films and just kind of his way of capturing the human condition / emotions, whatever it takes, of these characters. Really great film. And I watched some other Preston Sturges stuff. Looking forward to more. We also covered Whiplash, which I had seen on before on Awesome Movie Year. We covered that. So instead, it was my first time watching La La Land. That was a great film. Nice homage to old Hollywood. Gosling and Emma Stone just bringing it. And really great vision from your man Damien Chazelle right there. So that's going to be my number 9 pick. Number 8 is also Awesome Movie Year related. It's from 1971, Fiddler on the Roof, a biddy 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 bum, Norman Jewison. I don't know if this guy gets enough credit for being able to master so many types of movies. Here he's done a musical. I always think of Moonstruck for that family drama. You know, we've covered In the Heat of the Night before. He's just a true master. And I think Fiddler is a great musical and a real look into a subculture that sadly is still prevalent in some ways, not the subculture being prevalent, but the idea of racism driving subcultures out. Does that sound familiar to America right now? There's a lot of that this year in reflective films. So that's a thing. Okay, let's move on to something happier at number 7. It's from 2024, Yacht Rock, a documentary, D-O-C-K. The Yacht Rock documentary made for HBO was brilliant because the first few minutes they say, hey, we know you think this genre is a joke, but let me show you why it's not a joke. And then they dive deep into the history and go over Michael McDonald being on every song and Toto being on every song and Christopher Cross and all your favorite yacht rockers. You got a favorite in there? You let me know who it is. Maybe it's Steely Dan. Anyway, highly recommend that. And now I'm actually hosting Yacht Rock Bingo, so this movie has sadly foretold my future, my life. Okay, another Awesome Movie Year movie coming in at number 6. Bette Davis, The Little Foxes. Man, she is smoldering. She is calculating this kind of Southern drama, Southern family drama where everyone is scheming against each other. I thought it was cooking on all cylinders. I watched a lot of Bette Davis movies, All About Eve and Now Voyager, and those were both great. But Little Foxes was my favorite first-time watch of this past year in the Bette Davis field. Then we move up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, hey, we're at number 5. We're going to a sports documentary, Untold. I love the Untold series on Netflix. This is Malice at the Palace, talking about the infamous fight between the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Piston fans, but it also shows how certain Piston players instigated the fight. And what was really interesting was showcasing how this was Reggie Miller, the all-time Indiana Pacer, and the Pacers' best chance of winning a championship, and how this just derailed the whole thing right there. Number 4, we are going to go to our man J.C. Chandor, another Awesome Movie Year pick. What a great year for Awesome Movie Year, guys. A most violent year. It's just another smoldering New York gritty kind of crime drama where families are fighting against each other for turf. In this instance, are fighting each other for turf in the sanitation department business cleanup. Who would have thought? But really good, amazing Oscar Isaac performance. Really recommend that. Here's a cheat at number 3. We also on Awesome Movie Year for our first feature in 2014, we covered Faults, Riley Stearns, which was such a cool movie about a cult deprogrammer who's down on his luck and given one last shot to deprogram a cult leader. And of course, it takes twists and turns and In the end, maybe he doesn't deprogram her, but he gets reprogrammed by her. But so I'm going to tie that one with one that I actually like more. I watched all of Stern's movies this year. The one I like most is The Art of Self-Defense. That is such a good movie with Jesse Eisenberg as this kind of student who's trying to learn the ways of self-defense, and he's got a very charismatic teacher who is more than meets the eye. Okay, well, if that sounded cultish, we have to go to number 2. Amazing movie, could have easily been number 1 for me. Let's go to Midsommar, Ari Aster. I mean, is there a more exciting filmmaker working today? His kind of Swedish or let's say Scandinavian cult dramedy, because it is funny, whether it means to be or not, is just a mind trip, and it's wonderful, and it just keeps you on the edge of your toes. Florence Pugh crushing it, and really great. And number 1, we're going back to 1941, awesome movie year, and I'm actually going to throw my honorable mention on there, which could have been a top 10 also. We're going to Humphrey Bogart, but so the honorable mention, which could have easily, you can put it in the top 10, let's just do that, is going to be In a Lonely Place, the Nicholas Ray movie, which I think is the best example of the paranoid man who knows people are out to get him and actually has some type of reason and some type of proof and some type of motivation to get to that state. I think Bogart's incredible. So my number 1 first time watch this year is the ultimate, the quintessential, maybe the kickoff to the film noir, The Maltese Falcon. Bogart is just amazing in it. We know John Huston directs his ass off here. And then, of course, supporting play from the great Sidney Greenstreet and Mr. Peter Lorre. What a pleasure to watch it. Of course, any movie that uses the term dingus, I'm all for. Those are my first time watches, my top 10. A little rambling, a little verbose, but I loved it, and I'll take all your recommendations. Happy New Year. Let's watch more good movies in 2026.
All right, so we are back. So we had a few awesome movies on there. Sullivan's Travels, which I had mentioned in honorable mention. Also Fiddler on the Roof and The Little Foxes. Let's just throw out that 1-hour documentary from a series that he included on there. Any thoughts on any of these other ones he mentioned here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that so many awesome movie year movies are in there. Like I said, I love Sullivan's Travels. I love The Little Foxes was another one that I don't think that was my pick, but it was one that I had seen before and was really excited to talk about. A Most Violent Year was also another one of my picks, and I'm glad that he liked that one a lot. I love Riley Stearns, so I'm glad that he liked both Faults and The Art of Self-Defense. I think Riley Stearns films are great. So really, I feel like I have pushed Jason in the direction of so many great films that he enjoyed this year.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm happy to hear it. I love Humphrey Bogart. Maltese Falcon is great. In a Lonely Place is also great. Really, other than that sports documentary, and I have not seen the Yacht Rock film, although I'd be curious to check that out. I feel like, he's made some very good choices there.
Are you a La La Land fan? I like La La Land.
I like it. I don't love it. I'm sort of mixed on Damien Chazelle overall, which we talked about when we did our Whiplash episode. But I do enjoy La La Land, certainly more than Whiplash, which, as we talked about, I don't care for. So yeah, I don't know if it was a top 10 movie for me the year it came out, but I do like it.
Yeah. And a little inside baseball for the listeners, but Midsommar, which Josh was the guest on, is and will forever be the most downloaded episode of Piecing It Together. I don't think anything will ever catch up to it. So
even after all this time,
people want to hear us talk about Midsommar. I don't even remember what we said about Midsommar at this point.
I'm sure we said some really smart, insightful things about it.
We were great on that one. Some really cool puzzle pieces for sure.
All right.
Well, that does it for this year's First Time Watches. Josh, where can people find you and everything you're up to?
Well, you can check out Awesome Movie Year at awesomemovieyear.com or Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, and listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. I think we're still in the midst of our season on the films of 1971 as this episode is being released. I'm pretty sure that's going to be going for a little while longer, so check that out. You can find me at joshbellhateseverything.com, where I barely post anything anymore. But one thing I do still post there is this particular feature. So hopefully I'll get around to finishing it up by the time this episode comes out. So you can see all my past first time watches lists going back, I think, to 2008 when I started doing that, all at joshbellhateseverything.com, as well as some other old stuff. Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook. I'm at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd.
Awesome. Well, Josh, always great getting you back for these, and we'll talk to you again about a new movie this year.
Sounds good.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about our first time watches of 2025. Thank you to Josh Bell for joining me on that one, and thank you to all of you for listening. If you're enjoying piecing it together, make sure you are subscribed. Also, make sure you let us know what you think about these movies that we picked. We'd love to hear your thoughts on these and what some of your favorite first-time watches of last year were. And of course, you could also find us on social media, which is a great place to tell us about all those things. You can find me at Piecing Pod, and you could also join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And let's see, I should close us out with a piece of music like I always do to finish today's episode. You know, I'm not sure at the time that this goes out where I will be on the completion of my next album, but my latest release from me, David Rosen, not from the Pup Pups, my latest release was an album called Missing Pieces, and I'm going to play a song from that album. It's called Again and Again. Hope you enjoy it, and we will be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.